Chapter 1325, Lord Azura, is it? Emperor Ji smiled. I'd like to meet him if the opportunity arises. Sweat seeped out of Duan Fei's forehead. The Azura faction created great trauma for the independent state. If it weren't for Lord Azura's disappearance back then, the independent state would now be punctured with holes and bleeding everywhere already. If Lord Azura returned, the first to act would probably be the Fearless Alliance. The Fearless Alliance was the spearhead of the campaign with the other major factions of the independent state to eradicate Azura back then, so they had a great feud. If Azura's two greatest enemies were to be named, the first would be the Martial Arts Union and the second one would be the Fearless Alliance without fail. At the headquarters of the Fearless Alliance, Big Dipper looked like he was sitting on ants inside Yuanwan's office. What should we do? Big Dipper had paced dozens of times in front of Yuanwan already. Was your mom hit by a car again? Yuanwan peered at Big Dipper from the corner of her eyes. Big Dipper was startled briefly before becoming embarrassed. He didn't think Sis Feng would remember that still. Sis Feng, my mom didn't get hit by a car. Something major happened. Big Dipper sat down next to Yuanwan and asked with a mysterious expression, Sis Feng, could it be you forgot about Azura? Azura? Yuanwan was pensive when she heard that. After coming to the independent state, Yuanwan made sure she learned about the recent history of the independent state, especially since she was pretending to be the president of the Fearless Alliance. She knew a little bit about Azura. Rumors said Azura was the only faction that dared to clash with the Martial Arts Union in the independent state back then. Rumors also said Lord Azura was bloodthirsty and brutal, the most infamous super tyrant in the independent state. Unfortunately, no one knew Lord Azura's true appearance and name even now. As time passed, Lord Azura became the irreplaceable symbol of cruelty. Hasn't Azura disappeared for many years? Yuanwan turned to Big Dipper. That's right, they disappeared for many years, Big Dipper nodded repeatedly. However, Azura recently revived from the ashes. Rumors say Lord Azura has returned, so what if he's returned? Yuanwan said indifferently. Big Dipper gave Yuanwan a thumbs up immediately. Great. You're truly my Sis Feng indeed. Incomparably brave and truly a phoenix amongst humans. Speak human. Sis Feng, our Fearless Alliance participated in the plan to eradicate Azura back then. You were the most enthusiastic. Now that Lord Azura's returned, the first one he wants to kill is probably you. But Sis Feng is fearless. I admire you. Big Dipper looked reverent. Yuanwan, WTF. The Fearless Alliance actually participated in the plan to eradicate Azura, and Bro Flattop actually offended Lord Azura. She courted great disaster. As if piece of shit wasn't enough, now there was Lord Azura too. Would she find out that the president of the Martial Arts Union was also offended by Bro Flattop in a few days? Sis Feng, speaking of which, you've wreaked havoc on the four great clans of the independent state, the Nye, Ji, Ling, and Shen family, too, but the four great clans think we're scum, so they're unwilling to provoke us. Lord Azura, though, he's the most renowned brutal tyrant in the independent state. I'm afraid this time, Big Dipper said apprehensively. You useless thing. Even I'm not afraid of a mere Lord Azura. What are you afraid for? Yuanwan glanced at Big Dipper. My guess was right. The four great clans were all once offended by Bro Flattop. Sis Feng, I admire you the most in my life. You fought the Nye family's mercenaries, eliminated the Ji family's branches, stolen the Shen family's money. Big Dipper listed Bro Flattop's feats cheerfully. Yuanwan. Chapter 1326. Yuanwan could understand destroying a branch and fighting mercenaries, but what in the world was up with stealing the Shen family's money? However, Bro Flattop's modus operandi did match the overall style of the Fearless Alliance. Didn't the Fearless Alliance want to exterminate the Zhou family and steal their territory? Sis Feng, with Lord Azura's personality, he probably looks down on small fry like us and will probably target you first, Big Dipper told Yuanwan. Yuanwan, what kind of sin did she commit? She just wanted to live a stable life and use the Fearless Alliance's power to look for Si Yihan. Look at me now. I have piece of shit on the left, Emperor G on the right, and now there's some nuisance called Lord Azura. Who'll save me? I'm here, don't panic. You're also a middle senior manager of the Fearless Alliance. It's improper for you to panic like this. Yi Wanwan coldly glanced at Big Dipper. If worst came to worst, she'd flee at that time. Sis Feng is right. Big Dipper nodded vehemently. Before Yi Wanwan could say anything else, a knock resounded on the office door. Enter, Yi Wanwan called. Sis Feng. 7-Star looked at Yi Wanwan. What is it? Yi Wanwan asked. I transported Virus back, 7-Star said as he watched Yi Wanwan. Virus? Yi Wanwan was startled. What the heck was Virus? An ominous feeling rose in Yi Wanwan's heart. This was probably another test from 7-Star. However, what caused Yi Wanwan's head to pound harder was that she had no idea what Virus was. Oh, Virus is back. Big Dipper was surprised and turned to Yi Wanwan. Sis Feng, 7-Star is too considerate. Virus is the pet you adopted before you left back then. I remember how much Sis Feng loved him. 7-Star's icy gaze landed on Big Dipper. Yi Wanwan's lips turned up. 7-Star, take me to Virus. Okay. 7-Star turned and left. Yi Wanwan and Big Dipper followed behind 7-Star. Unease plagued Yi Wanwan's mind. What kind of pet did Bro Flattop raise? If it was a cat or dog, all was well. But if it was... A moment later, 7-Star brought Yi Wanwan to an empty room. They were some distance away when they heard the terrifying roar of a ferocious beast burst out of that room. Yi Wanwan. Huh? Have you ever experienced despair? I have. Yi Wanwan felt her legs growing weak upon hearing that sound. Can I not enter? He's an adult indeed. His roars turned so frightening. Big Dipper nodded repeatedly. Soon, 7-Star opened the door to the room. Yi Wanwan looked inside and saw a pitch-black beast laying on the room's sofa. Noble, pitch-black, devilish. This was Yi Wanwan's first impression. Yi Wanwan finally realized Virus was a Black Panther. The Black Panther's icily glinting eyes slowly swept over Big Dipper and 7-Star before finally landing on Yi Wanwan. Sis Feng, don't you miss Virus? 7-Star asked Yi Wanwan. It's fine. Yi Wanwan forced a smile on her face. Fine your ass. Before 7-Star could say anything else, the Black Panther, Virus, leaped down from the sofa and walked toward them with his long tail swaying. Chapter 1327. Yi Wanwan smiled and tried her best to be calm. What should I do? Beasts were different from humans. They didn't rely on looks, they relied on scent. She could pretend to be Bro Flattop in front of other people, but what about a beast? Yi Wanwan couldn't reveal any of her true thoughts in front of 7-Star, so she could only pray in her mind. Regardless of what Virus did, Yi Wanwan made up an excuse already. A beast was a beast after all. In addition, Big Dipper said Virus was just a cub when Bro Flattop raised Virus, and Bro Flattop disappeared when Virus was a year old. So many years had passed, so it would be very normal if Virus didn't recognize or forgot Bro Flattop's scent, right? Of course, Big Dipper would definitely believe Big Dipper's excuse, but whether 7-Star would also believe her was an entirely different matter. Roar! Virus suddenly released a loud roar when he approached Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan felt her eardrums hurting upon hearing a panther's roar at such a close range. It caused her to tremble with fear unwittingly. I'm doomed, Yi Wanwan's face turned ashen. She worked hard for so long but ended up being exposed by a Black Panther. Just freaking. 7-Star's bone-chilling eyes landed on Yi Wanwan upon seeing Virus roar, and a terrifying, cold smile spread across his face. Yi Wanwan could even feel 7-Star's faint murderous aura. Actually, Yi Wanwan was about to give her prepared excuse when a furry object suddenly rubbed against her abdomen back and forth. Yi Wanwan reflexively looked down. Virus, who acted haughty and bloodthirsty just a second ago, was rubbing his large head against her like he was seeking affection. Yi Wanwan, WTF? Ha, Sis Feng, I told you Virus was very smart back then. Look at how he still recognizes you after so many years. Big Dipper laughed and wildly stroked Virus' body with his right hand. Roar! Virus released a furious roar, and his black fur stood on its end. His eyes filled with a primitive savageness as he stared at Big Dipper. Big Dipper froze on the spot, his right hand still pinching Virus's left cheek. Sis? The phone looked at him. Virus, I fed you a chicken leg back then. Have you forgotten? Big Dipper hastily said. Yi Wan pulled away Big Dipper's hand. Did this punk want to lose his hand? Pinching a Black Panther's cheek without any restraint, she wouldn't pity him if his hand was bitten off. Behave, Virus, don't be angry. Yi Wan applied her technique for pacifying Great White to Virus. Upon seeing a lack of reaction from Virus, Yi Wan mustered her courage and used her right hand to gently scratch Virus' chin. The result elicited joy in Yi Wan. It looked like Virus enjoyed it. Sis Feng, Virus only acknowledges you and doesn't acknowledge anyone else. He's too dangerous. You should make him scram, Big Dipper told Yi Wan. How about I make you scram? Yi Wan glanced at Big Dipper. Big Dipper immediately put on a flattering smile and looked at Virus. Good guy, you only recognize one owner in your life. I admire you, Yi Wan. Where's your integrity? Seven Star stood on the side, and his expression became increasingly confused as he watched how familiar Virus acted with Yi Wan. Chapter 1328 Virus was adopted by Bro Flattop when he was young, so he only acknowledged Bro Flattop, and it was difficult for anyone else to approach him. Seven Star was surprised as he watched the close familiarity between Yi Wan and Virus. Seven Star was very suspicious about Yi Wan's identity as the president of the Fearless Alliance ever since he met her, and this suspicion intensified as time went on. However, Yi Wan managed to pass every single one of his tests, even if the reaction wasn't perfect. For example, Virus. If this woman really wasn't Bro Flattop, why would Virus act so familiar with her? Yi Wan herself was also extremely astonished. An inexplicable smile spread across Yi Wan's face as she watched Virus rubbing his giant head back and forth on her stomach. Brother, is your head itchy? Yi Wan didn't understand why Bro Flattop's pet, Virus, acted so familiar with her. Perhaps she was finally lucky for once. Auras were very mystical sometimes, like how Great White really liked Tang Tang the first time he met Tang Tang. President! An elderly man appeared out of nowhere and sprinted toward them. Isn't this Virus? He's also back. The elderly man was surprised when he saw the Black Panther next to Yi Wan. This elderly man wasn't a stranger to Yi Wan. She interacted with him when this elderly man and Seven Star planned to eliminate the Zhou family that day. What is it? Yi Wan gave the elderly man side-eye. The elderly man smiled ingratiatingly. President, it's like this. I just discovered a group of suspicious people near our headquarters. I bet they're up to no good. They might have even been sent by our enemies, so I came to ask President how I should handle it. If this was the past, he wouldn't have been so long-winded. He'd kill them directly. However, ever since the President returned, she hadn't sought him out to be her training partner like in the past, so he decided to use this opportunity to get some face time in front of the President. Do I need to teach you what to do about something like this? Yi Wan asked coldly. Looking into the matter will do. Release them if they're innocent. Imprison them if they were really sent by our enemies. Yes. The elderly man nodded frantically and turned to leave. The elderly man barely took a few steps before turning around and looking back at Yi Wan. He added, Oh right, President, those people said their master was some Rose of Death, and told us to give them some face. Rose of Death? Both Big Dipper and Seven Star were taken back. Rumors claimed that the Rose of Death was a super terrifying power that could rival Azura. However, didn't the Nye family disperse the rumors and say the Rose of Death didn't exist? The rumored Rose of Death was just fiction, and it was all a misunderstanding. So why did a Rose of Death suddenly pop up? Sis Feng, there's something fishy about this. How about we go take a look? Big Dipper asked Yi Wan. Yi Wan was also very stunned. This had to be a coincidence. China was so freaking far from the independent state. It couldn't be the 5-member mercenary group. If the 5-member mercenary group found her, wouldn't her identity be completely exposed? Yi Wan was inwardly muttering impossible, but remained calm on the surface. After some careful consideration, she assumed it was probably some fanatical fans who respected Rose of Death and were pretending to be Rose of Death. This was a common occurrence a long time ago. Chapter 1329, President. So should we capture them first and investigate the matter, or does the president want to interrogate them personally? The elderly man asked Yi Wanwan. Let's go see them. 7 Stars sounded detached. Yi Wanwan had no choice but to do that. She followed the elderly man and walked downstairs. 3rd floor, inside the detainment room, little Lolita and her group all stared at each other blankly. Wasn't Emperor Ji too deceptive? Didn't he tell them their master was at the Fearless Alliance? Look at where they were now. After they scrounged up their courage and went to the Fearless Alliance, they announced themselves as the Rose of Death. The Fearless Alliance acted swiftly and locked them up straight away. Even though they were in the independent state, their master, Rose of Death, should be extremely renowned, right? Damn, we won't be killed inside the Fearless Alliance, right? Everyone knows the Fearless Alliance's characteristics. Heidi assessed their surroundings. It wasn't too possible for them to escape from this place. What should we do, Brother Chong? I'm scared. Long-haired man tugged bearded man's arm as he trembled. What are you scared about? Brother Chong is here. The Fearless Alliance has to give Brother Chong some face. Bearded man scoffed. Brother Chong, you're so awesome. So why are we still trapped here? Long-haired man looked at bearded man. Maybe because the Fearless Alliance has a special way of treating guests, bearded man said. Heidi glanced at bearded man. We're about to die, yet you're still bluffing? How impudent. You dare to question my brother Chong? Damn fatty. Long-haired man glared fiercely at Heidi. Heidi didn't want to pay attention to long-haired man anymore and turned to the silent old Jiang. Old Jiang, what should we do now? Old Jiang shook his head. Their group was clueless about the independent state situation, and now they were trapped inside the Fearless Alliance. How should he know what to do? So hungry, little Lolita clutched her stomach with both hands and dejectedly sat to the side. The lights in the room suddenly turned on before Heidi could reply. 7 Star, Big Dipper, and the elderly man were the first to enter the room. What the hell do you want? Why did you capture us? Long-haired man angrily shouted at the elderly man. They didn't do anything at all. They just went to the Fearless Alliance to find their master. They offhandedly mentioned Rose of Death and were captured for no reason. It was completely unjustifiable. Shut up. The elderly man fiercely glared at long-haired man. He was the nosiest of that group. Shut up. Long-haired man snorted. Fine. Luing calmly glanced at 7 Star and didn't say anything. Only then did Yi Wanwan arrive belatedly and enter the room. Yi Wanwan looked inside. It was none other than the 5-member mercenary group captured inside the room. Yi Wanwan suddenly felt like doomsday was approaching. How did the 5-member mercenary group run to the independent state from China? How did they find the Fearless Alliance and discover she was there? When the mercenary group saw Yi Wanwan, they jolted. Emperor Ji didn't lie to them. Master was really in the Fearless Alliance. Little Lolita stood up and excitedly looked at Yi Wanwan. Mas. Little Lolita was about to call out when Yi Wanwan interrupted her with a wave. You're saying you're members of Rose of Death? Yi Wanwan shouted coldly while looking at little Lolita and her group. Chapter 1330. 1330. The 5-member mercenary group was taken back upon hearing that. What does Master mean? More than that, how come Master looks like she doesn't know us at all? I heard that. You came to the Fearless Alliance to look for someone, right? 7 Star turned to Heidi and his group. Yes. Little Lolita automatically nodded. They were looking for someone indeed, and the person they were looking for showed up already. Then who are you looking for? 7 Star had a meaningful look. Luing looked at Yi Wanwan, then at 7 Star, his brows furrowing and a pensive expression on his face. Yi Wanwan was truly miserable. If the 5-member mercenary group didn't mention they were part of the Rose of Death, she could openly admit they were subordinates she acquired while she was gone from the independent state. However, the 5-member mercenary group loudly proclaimed they were part of the Rose of Death, So Yi Wanwan absolutely couldn't admit it. Rose of Death was a fictional power and didn't exist. So why would Bro Flattop pretend to be Black Widow when she was the president of the Fearless Alliance? Yi Wanwan decided she couldn't reveal her relationship to them no matter what. Otherwise, both the 5-member mercenary group and she would end here today. You say you're members of the Rose of Death. Could it be that you came here today to look for Black Widow? Yi Wanwan was extremely anxious on the inside when she saw little Lolita about to say something but had to maintain the calm and indifference on her face. Little Lolita was taken back. She looked at Yi Wanwan, not understanding Master's meaning. Why would we come here to look for Black Widow? The silent Lu Ying suddenly interjected. Lu Ying? Yi Wanwan automatically looked at Lu Ying. Yi Wanwan didn't notice Lu Ying when she entered the room, but her heart chilled when she saw him. Why was Lu Ying with the 5-member mercenary group? There were grievances between her and Lu Ying. If Lu Ying carelessly said something, she'd die without a burial place. I didn't expect us to meet here, Lu Ying said. Yi Wanwan inwardly cursed. You know Sis by phone? 7 Star's icy gaze landed on Lu Ying. By phone? Lu Ying turned to 7 Star. What by phone? You're saying she's by phone? What? You don't think she's by phone? 7 Star's bone-chilling gaze nonchalantly glanced at Yi Wanwan. The 5-member mercenary group was utterly confused. They didn't know what they should say. Of course she's not by phone. Lu Ying scoffed. Oh? 7 Star looked thoughtful. Since you say you recognize her, then tell me, who is she? Lu Ying looked at Yi Wanwan. Isn't she the president of the Fearless Alliance, Bro Flattop? Yi Wanwan was already prepared for her identity to be exposed, but Lu Ying's words elicited astonishment inside of her. That's not strange. Most people don't know Sis Feng's name and only know her nickname. Big Dipper laughed loudly. Oh, so the president of the Fearless Alliance, Bro Flattop, is named by Feng. Lu Ying nodded and swiftly turned to Yi Wanwan. President, I hope you've been well. It's been a while. Chapter 1331. Yeah, Yi Wanwan didn't know what Lu Ying was doing, but her only option in this situation was to nod and go along with him. What fond memories? Lu Ying smiled faintly. Back then, President single-handedly eliminated an evil power in China. We happened to offend that evil power and were coincidentally saved by President. The 5-member mercenary group was startled. When were we ever abducted by an evil power? President, my name is Lu Ying. Do you still remember us after all these years? Lu Ying asked with a chuckle. Yi Wanwan put on an act and pretended to contemplate it for a moment before saying, now that you mention it, it does ring a bell. Unfortunately, President rejected us when we wanted to follow President. You told us that you'd think about taking us in if we could get to the independent state. President, we went through a profuse amount of trials and hardships, but we finally caught up to you and arrived in the independent state, Lu Ying said. Old Jiang from the 5-member mercenary group was the first to regain his senses. He didn't know why Lu Ying and Master were saying this, but they wouldn't go wrong by following Lu Ying's story. President, we want to follow you, Old Jiang added hastily. You're truly persistent. However, my Fearless Alliance doesn't allow just anyone to enter. Moreover, you're outsiders. Outsiders need to die, Big Dipper said with a sneer while looking at Lu Ying and his group. Wait, 7 Star interjected suddenly. Didn't you say you belonged to the Rose of Death earlier? Isn't that inconsistent with your current explanation? Old Jiang's brows furrowed. That was a little trick of ours, Lu Ying said. What kind of behemoth is the Fearless Alliance? If small fry like us came to the Fearless Alliance and clamored to see Bro Flattop of the Fearless Alliance, you would probably kick us out immediately, right? Lu Ying continued as he looked at 7 Star. However, if we said we were members of the Rose of Death, a faction like that would probably alarm the president. As the result shows, we achieved our objective, didn't we? 7 Star sunk into silence, his eyes assessing Lu Ying. You've gone through a lot of trouble to enter the Fearless Alliance, Yi Wanwan told Lu Ying and the 5-member mercenary group. That's right. President, we really want to follow you, little Lolita said pitifully. Sis Feng, they're outsiders. According to the traditional rules established by the Martial Arts Union, 7-star turned to Yi Wanwan. What? Do I need you to tell me what to do? Yi Wanwan questioned him coldly. It's Sis Feng's own decision, of course. 7-star retreated to the side and didn't say anything else. Big Dipper, bring them to my office, Yi Wanwan instructed Big Dipper before leaving. After Yi Wanwan returned to the office, her face was ashen, and her heart was pounding madly. It had to be said that there were truly too many risks today. What kind of trouble was Lu Ying cooking up this time? She originally thought Lu Ying would expose her identity. To her surprise, Lu Ying actually helped her instead. However, what puzzled Yi Wanwan was why the 5-member mercenary group was with Lu Ying. Additionally, all 6 of them came to the independent state and knew she was in the Fearless Alliance. Sis Feng, you don't really plan to take those outsiders in, right? Big Dipper opened the door and entered at that time. Where are they? Yi Wanwan asked. They're outside the door. I didn't let them enter, Big Dipper replied. Chapter 1332. Big Dipper thought for a moment before sincerely saying, Sis Feng, I heard that the Martial Arts Union is about to make trouble for you. Oh. Yi Wanwan was startled. She didn't do anything. Why would the Martial Arts Union come to make trouble for her? We don't know why yet. But getting the Martial Arts Union's attention definitely isn't good. The rules of the independent state prohibit the entry of outsiders. If you take in those people, I'm afraid it won't end well, Big Dipper replied. Yi Wanwan naturally knew the independent state's rules, but didn't Bro Flat Top of the Fearless Alliance always ignore the rules? Also, Sis Feng, those 6 people might be decent in the outside world. But they're trash in the independent state, especially our Fearless Alliance. What can they do? They're a waste of rice. Big Dipper kept trying to persuade Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan didn't refute Big Dipper's words. It wasn't until arriving in the independent state that Yi Wanwan truly understood the saying, however strong you are, there's always someone stronger. For example, Lu Ying was the head captain of the Xi family's hidden guards in China, so he was quite capable. But that was only in China. His strength was utterly insignificant in the independent state. Take your leave first and let them enter, Yi Wanwan told Big Dipper. Hold on. Sis Feng, there's something else. When Xiren is about to come back, Big Dipper said hesitantly. When Xiren? Surprise rose in Yi Wanwan's heart. After entering the Fearless Alliance, Yi Wanwan crammed information about all of Bro Flat Top's interpersonal relationships, so she had heard about When Xiren. When Xiren was Bro Flat Top's sworn elder brother, rumors said he was an utter lunatic and degenerate. His ill reputation rang far in the independent state. Based on Yi Wanwan's understanding, When Xiren and Bro Flat Top, Bai Feng, had an extremely good relationship and were close like a biological brother and sister. After Bro Flat Top went missing, he caused a series of commotions but didn't obtain any information about Bro Flat Top. I got it. Yi Wanwan nodded. Another person greatly familiar with Bro Flat Top and also someone not to be trifled with. Yi Wanwan sighed inwardly. Life was really like a play and completely relied on one's acting skills. If this continued, she would get an Oscar soon. Now though, she could only think of an impromptu solution whenever a challenge arose. No matter who When Xiren was, she had no choice but to keep acting. Shortly after, Big Dipper turned around and left the office. A moment later, the 5-member mercenary group and Lu Ying slowly entered the office. Lock the door. Yi Wanwan told Bearded Man quickly locked the office's door from the inside. Master, what's going on? Little Lolita looked at Yi Wanwan with confusion written all over her face. Why did Master pretend to be unfamiliar with us earlier? Also, how did Master turn into the president of the Fearless Alliance? Let me ask you first, Yi Wanwan asked the mercenary group, how did you come to the independent state and how did you know I was in the Fearless Alliance? Emperor Ji told us, little Lolita answered honestly. Ji Xiuran. Yi Wanwan was startled by little Lolita's answer. We were brought here by Emperor Ji's people from China, old Jiang explained. Emperor Ji also told us, you were in the Fearless Alliance, Master, so we came here, little Lolita said. Yi Wanwan frowned deeply as she sunk into contemplation. Chapter 1333. Ji Xiuran ordered people to go to China and brought the 5-member mercenary group back to the independent state, meaning Ji Xiuran knew her true identity already. Yi Wanwan recalled Ji Xiuran's self-introduction to her that day. Yi Wanwan was confident Ji Xiuran definitely knew she wasn't the president of the Fearless Alliance, bro flat top. However, what Yi Wanwan didn't understand was why Ji Xiuran didn't expose her if he knew her identity. Why did he follow along? Yi Wanwan turned to Luing. I don't know. Old Jiang shook his head. They were unfamiliar with Luing and didn't know how Luing was brought to the independent state. Long time no see. A bitter smile surfaced on Luing's face as he looked at Yi Wanwan. Back then, after Si Mingli and Qin Ruoxi gained control of the Si family, Luing believed Qin Ruoxi betrayed Si Yihan, so he snuck into Qin Ruoxi's room in the middle of the night to assassinate Qin Ruoxi. Unfortunately, Qin Ruoxi wasn't at the Si residence that night, and he was caught by Emperor Ji's subordinate, Duan Fei, and was brought here. Yi Wanwan was pensive when she heard Luing's explanation. In other words, Duan Fei wanted to abduct Qin Ruoxi and bring her to the independent state, but Qin Ruoxi wasn't in her room and Duan Fei coincidentally ran into Luing, who went to assassinate Qin Ruoxi. A series of incidents later, Luing was brought here. Yi Wanwan still couldn't comprehend Ji Xiuran's intentions. Why did he bring people with a connection to her to the independent state? What did he plan to do? Old Jiang, wait outside the door with them. I have something to say to Luing. Yi Wanwan turned to Old Jiang. Old Jiang nodded and led little Lolita and the others outside. Only Yi Wanwan and Luing remained in the office. Is there news about Si Yihan? Yi Wanwan asked. Luing shook his head. Not long after Ninth Master disappeared, Qin Ruoxi and Si Mingli took control of the Si family, and I left the Si family. However, I'm in Ninth Master's debt. I just wanted to kill Qin Ruoxi for her actions as final payment toward the Si family and Ninth Master. After that, anything that happens to the Si family will be none of my business. Yi Wanwan had never doubted Luing's loyalty toward Si Yihan and the Si family. Luing was merely a bit blindly loyal. Miss Wanwan, I'm very sorry for the past events, Luing mocked himself. I always thought you had an ulterior motive for staying with Ninth Master. However, I was too stupid. The one with an ulterior motive wasn't Miss Wanwan, it was Qin Ruoxi. Guilt toward Yi Wanwan lingered in Luing's heart. After Qin Ruoxi took control of the Si family, he not only realized Qin Ruoxi's true personality but also his own stupidity. Let's forget about the past for now. Earlier too, Yi Wanwan looked slightly perplexed. Luing smiled. Are you talking about how you're pretending to be the president of the Fearless Alliance? I learned from old Jiang that you claim to be the Rose of Death's leader, Black Widow, but Rose of Death hasn't appeared for many years and its leader probably isn't Miss Wanwan's age. Hence, I surmised that Miss Wanwan was pretending. Then I saw Miss Wanwan again in the Fearless Alliance, and those people called Miss Wanwan president. I thought maybe Miss Wanwan was pretending to be the president of the Fearless Alliance this time. Chapter 1334, and 7-Star clearly didn't believe Miss Wanwan's identity, so I naturally knew what to say, Luing explained. Yi Wanwan nodded. It had to be said that Luing might be stupidly loyal and often acted ignorantly in the Si family. He was actually an intelligent person. This time, if it weren't for Luing, she and the 5-member mercenary group would have been in big trouble. Miss Wanwan, you're now the president of the Fearless Alliance. Please give me another chance. I don't want to return to China. Luing suddenly half knelt down next to Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan was contemplative when she heard that. If she allowed Luing to stay, she didn't need to worry about Luing exposing her identity. Based on her understanding of Luing wouldn't betray anyone who he swore his loyalty and fealty to. If Luing wanted to harm her, he wouldn't have rescued her earlier. If she allowed Luing to stay, it would be advantageous to make him responsible for searching for Si Yihan in the independent state. Yi Wanwan made a decision after a moment of thought. She nodded and said, First, find a place to rest with old Jiang and the others. I have a plan for this. Remember, don't let old Jiang and the others mention the Rose of Death again or call me master. Thank you, Miss Wanwan. I understand what to do. Gratitude surfaced in Lu Ying's eyes. Lu Ying soon got up and left. After Lu Ying left, the Black Panther, Virus, slowly strolled into the office and silently sat down next to Yi Wanwan. His eyes, akin to brass bells, glanced at Yi Wanwan occasionally. Yi Wanwan didn't hold any fear toward Virus anymore. She knelt down next to Virus and scratched his chin. Virus leaned his head against Yi Wanwan's arm with pleasure, causing it to sink instantly. Ahem, this head truly wasn't a lightweight. President! An elderly man suddenly burst into the office in haste. Roar! Virus's terrifying eyes turned to the elderly man instantly, and a roar escaped his mouth. Little Black, behave, Yi Wanwan quickly pacified Virus. Virus immediately narrowed his eyes. Yi Wanwan's comforting words were evidently very effective. Only then did the elderly man speak. President, Emperor Ji is here. He's specifically looking for you. Do you want to let him inside? The only one in the Fearless Alliance who knew their president was Emperor Ji's fiancée was Autumn Water. No one else was in the know. Hence, it was normal for this elderly man to be on high alert upon Emperor Ji's arrival. No need to panic. Bring Emperor Ji here, Yi Wanwan said with a frown. Perfect timing. She just wanted to ask Ji Xiaoran why he brought the 5-member mercenary group to the independent state. The elderly man naturally wouldn't second-guess his president's decision, so he turned and left. A moment later, Ji Xiaoran appeared in Yi Wanwan's line of sight with a faint smile on his lips. Before Yi Wanwan could say anything, she saw an enormous white tiger following behind Emperor Ji. This white tiger was familiar to Yi Wanwan. Isn't this Great White? Great White naturally walked to Yi Wanwan and evaluated her with mixed feelings in his eyes. Virus stood up, an inexplicable vicious glint surfacing in his eyes when he saw Great White next to Yi Wanwan. This white tiger is probably your pet as well, Ji Xiaoran said to Yi Wanwan with a light chuckle. You know, Yi Wanwan frowned. Yi Wanwan surmised Ji Xiaoran probably discovered everything already. Chapter 1335, No what? Ji Xiaoran stated with a dry smile, while you were gone from the independent state, it turns out you went to China? That place is rather nice. I was afraid you would get lonely, so I brought some of your friends from China here. You aren't angry, right? Yi Wanwan was startled. Could it be that Ji Xiaoran didn't investigate my identity but simply investigated the places I went and the people I befriended? Then Emperor Ji brought the 5-member mercenary group and Lu Ying to the independent state just to fend off my boredom? What kind of mad logic is this? Of course, Yi Wanwan wasn't dumb. Since Emperor Ji didn't raise doubts about her identity, Yi Wanwan wouldn't seek trouble for no reason or say anything that might expose herself. Oh right, Emperor Ji looked at Yi Wanwan. Are you close to the Xi family of China? We're all right. I had some interactions with the Xi family in China. Oh? Only some interactions? Emperor Ji's lips turned up with an inexplicable smile. Yes, Yi Wanwan nodded with conviction. That's fine. I was just asking. I heard that the patriarch of the Xi family disappeared. He should be your friend, right? How about I help you look for him? Look for him? Out of fear, sweat-drenched Yi Wanwan. Things really couldn't be explained if he was found. No need. I've greatly troubled you already. I can find him myself. Yi Wanwan forced herself to be calm and smiled placidly. I was just joking with you. Ji Xiaoran smiled faintly. The Fearless Alliance has changed in the years you were gone. There are a lot of side factions. You should be able to use the people I brought to the independent state. You should feel more at ease with a few confidants by your side. Thank you so much, Yi Wanwan said. Everything would be fine as long as Emperor Ji didn't doubt her identity. You seem to be quite nervous every time you see me. Ji Xiaoran walked closer to Yi Wanwan. The smile that lingered on his lips made her feel like a spring breeze had washed over her. However, Yi Wanwan wasn't in the mood to admire this handsome man's good looks. How could she not be nervous? She was pretending to be Emperor Ji's fiancée. Everything would go to hell if she made any mistakes. I'm your fiancé. Why would I be nervous around you? Yi Wanwan steadied her mind and asked with a chuckle as she met Ji Xiuran's long and narrow, witty eyes. "Oh, is that so?" Ji Xiuran said. "Why else?" Yi Wanwan feigned calmness. "You're right." Ji Xiuran nodded. "Then I think it's about time for us to get married. What do you think? Why can't we keep being an engaged couple? Why the heck are we getting married? I haven't been back in the independent state for that long. You should know about the situation with the Fearless Alliance. There's a lot of business that requires my attention. I also need to stabilize the Fearless Alliance's internal affairs. Let's postpone it," Yi Wanwan said placidly after pretending to think for a moment. Ji Xiuran chuckled lightly. "I was merely joking with you. I also don't plan on getting married." Yi Wanwan's eyes brightened. Ji Xiuran doesn't plan on getting married? This is freaking wonderful. If that's true, then I can act more realistically. What did you say? Yi Wanwan's face chilled instantly. You don't plan on getting married? What do you mean? We're engaged. Do you plan to keep being my fiancé? For your whole life? If it's Ji Xiuran himself who doesn't want to get married, it has nothing to do with me. Chapter 1336. When Ji Xiuran heard that, he looked at Yi Wanwan with amusement, indulgence surfacing in his eyes. "That's more like you, Xiaofeng. I wanted to ask you a question," Ji Xiuran quietly said. "What question?" Yi Wanwan replied. "Were you happy all these years?" Yi Wanwan turned silent. What does Ji Xiuran mean? "I've been fine," Yi Wanwan answered after a moment of thought. "You don't need to answer my question right now. Tell me later. I have something to do, so I'll take my leave now." Ji Xiuran turned to leave. After Ji Xiuran left, Yi Wanwan was bewildered. Why is Ji Xiuran so nutty? Anyway, it was good she somehow made her way through. Yi Wanwan immediately turned around and looked at Great White with a joyous expression. She never would have imagined she would see Great White in the independent state. Before Yi Wanwan could walk toward Great White, Virus intercepted her path and blocked Yi Wanwan behind him. Virus seemed a bit agitated and kept growling at Great White lowly occasionally as though in warning. However, Great White merely peered at Virus from the corner of his eye, as though deeming it below himself to pay attention to Virus. Roar! Before Yi Wanwan could react, Virus released a low and powerful roar and walked toward Great White, using his paw to slap Great White a few times, seemingly testing something. Yi Wanwan was dumbfounded. Virus didn't want to attack Great White, right? Don't humiliate yourself. A panther was merely a panther after all. How could he compare to a tiger, especially a haughty tiger like Great White? After continuous provocation from Virus, Great White finally stood up slowly, his bone-chilling eyes turning to Virus, a low warning growl coming from his mouth. Damn! Sweat covered Yi Wanwan's body. These two ancestors weren't planning to fight, right? Yi Wanwan didn't mind a fight between people since she could just pull them apart. If two ferocious beasts started fighting though, how would she pull them apart and who would dare to do that? Great White, be good? Don't be angry. Yi Wanwan hastily soothed him as she turned to Great White. However, what Yi Wanwan didn't expect was that her pacification ignited Virus fury in an instant. Faster than Yi Wanwan could react, Virus transformed into a black shadow and pounced at Great White. In the blink of an eye, Virus and Great White rolled into a tumble and started fighting. Inside the office, the growls and furious roars of wild animals rang out ceaselessly. Yi Wanwan stood in her spot and face-bombed when she saw the fight. What kind of sin did she commit? Sis Feng, what happened? Big Dipper rushed in all of a sudden. Big Dipper didn't need Yi Wanwan's answer and could see the situation for himself as soon as he stepped into the office. This white tiger is strong. It can actually hold its own against Virus. Big Dipper nodded reflexively as he watched the animals fighting from the sideline. Separate them. Yi Wanwan ordered Big Dipper. Big Dipper froze in his spot upon hearing that and turned to Yi Wanwan in disbelief. Sis Feng, you aren't serious, right? You're telling me to separate two fierce beasts in a fight. If he really did that, Virus and that white tiger would probably rip him apart. Chapter 1337. Yi Wanwan didn't think too deeply and swiftly shot forward, hugging Virus. Virus roared but abruptly calmed down when his vicious eyes saw Yi Wanwan. Great White! Yi Wanwan hugged Virus with one arm and hugged Great White with her other arm. Big Dipper was flabbergasted by this scene and automatically gave Yi Wanwan a thumbs up. Awesome! Sis Fong, I don't admire walls, but I admire you. Yi Wanwan tuned Big Dipper out and kept comforting Great White and Virus as she knelt next to him. These two ancestors' astrological signs probably didn't match. They started ripping each other apart the instant they met without even a greeting. Little Black, be good. Great White just came here, so don't bully Great White, Yi Wanwan meaningfully lectured as she ran her hands over Virus's ink-like fur again and again. Ah, Sis Fong, you sound like you're disciplining your son. Big Dipper guffawed loudly. Virus has been with you in the Fearless Alliance since he was young, so this place is basically his territory. A fierce beast like him is extremely intelligent and also has a very strong territorial sense, so it's normal that they would fight. Do I need you to tell me? Yi Wanwan glanced at Big Dipper. This buffoon lacked a brain, right? He had the guts to explain something that was common sense? Any wild beast has an extremely intense sense of territory, all right? Who hasn't raised a few wild beasts before? Sis Fong, I heard. It was Emperor Ji who brought this white tiger here? What's the deal? Big Dipper asked Yi Wanwan curiously. It's a white tiger I adopted after leaving the Fearless Alliance. I asked Emperor Ji to help me find him last time. Yi Wanwan found a random excuse. Big Dipper was briefly startled and was filled with admiration. You truly deserve to be my Sis Fong. You can raise two beasts anywhere you go. All right, Sis Fong, my friend raised a bear. Are you interested? If Sis Fong is interested, I can tell my friend to give his bear to you. No thanks, I'm not interested. If you're truly bored out of your mind, then get your ass over here and help me look after them, Yi Wanwan said coldly. Sis Fong, I suddenly remembered I have something to do. I'll talk to you later. Big Dipper dashed out of Yi Wanwan's office as soon as he finished speaking. After a while, Great White and Virus continued to stare at each other with an intense hostility in each other's eyes. If it weren't for Yi Wanwan's continual pacification, Great White and Virus probably wouldn't relent until one survivor remained. It had to be said that Virus' fighting capability caused Yi Wanwan to develop a whole new level of respect for him. Great White was a big-sized feline while Virus was medium-sized feline. One was a tiger and one was a panther, yet they still fought each other on even grounds. Be good, Little Black. Be good, Great White. Come on, shake paws. You're good friends from now on. Yi Wanwan grabbed Virus and Great White's paws and smacked them together. However, Virus released a dangerous growl while Great White coldly looked at Virus. Their astrological signs truly don't match. President. An impeccably dressed, middle-aged man entered Yi Wanwan's office with large strides. Speak, Yi Wanwan said. President, there are people from the Martial Arts Union who want to see you, the middle-aged man replied with a frenzied expression. Martial Arts Union. Yi Wanwan frowned lightly when she heard that. Chapter 1338. Big Dipper mentioned to Yi Wanwan earlier that the Martial Arts Union would seek trouble from her. However, after coming to the independent state and entering the Fearless Alliance, she followed the rules rather well and didn't do anything inappropriate. As the official power of the independent state, why was the Martial Arts Union looking to make trouble for her? Could it be that Bro Flat Top did something that offended the Martial Arts Union, and now the Martial Arts Union is adding the payback to my tab? Yi Wanwan thought. If that's true, then I truly became a professional scapegoat. I know. Come here and help me look after these two. Yi Wanwan slowly stood up but didn't look away from Virus and Great White, afraid that these two ancestors would start fighting as soon as she looked away. Virus had no regard for his life at all when he fought, and Great White might not like to instigate trouble, but he wasn't afraid of trouble either. If Virus wanted to fight to the death with him, Great White would only comply. Virus. Press, The man in a suit's expression instantly shifted when he heard that and sweat soaked his forehead. President, you know Virus' personality best. He's too aggressive and powerful, and only listens to you in the entire Fearless Alliance. How could I watch over them? What made the suited man most speechless was that his president not only raised Virus but also obtained a white tiger. If these two beasts started fighting, who could suppress them? Moreover, what would he do if these two wild beasts didn't fight each other and wanted to tear him apart instead? Do as I say, stop blabbering, Yi Wanwan ordered coldly. All right, helpless, the suited man was forced to nod in agreement. He stood as far from the two animals as he could. Don't let them start fighting. You'll be responsible if anything happens to them, Yi Wanwan added. President, if they really start fighting and I can't hold them back, what should I do? The suited man asked when he saw Yi Wanwan leaving. Then come find me SCP. Yi Wanwan left the office after saying that. The conference room on the 5th floor. An elderly man and several young men and women had been waiting inside the conference room for a long time. The leader was around 60 years old. He wasn't young, but he looked full of energy and didn't appear old at all. The young people standing next to the elderly man all had their hands behind their backs with aloof expressions and an extraordinary aura. Soon, Yi Wanwan entered the conference room, accompanied by Big Dipper and 7 Star. Yi Wanwan was walking in the front while Big Dipper and 7 Star followed behind on her left and right sides. Elder Jean, our president is here, Big Dipper announced while looking at the elderly man. The elderly man, Elder Jean, lightly nodded upon hearing that but merely glanced at Yi Wanwan without any intention of speaking. At Elder Jin's signal, a young man in black sneered and said, "We've heard your name for a long time. What an honor to meet you today. Unfortunately, this meeting doesn't live up to your reputation." Big Dipper's brows furrowed slightly, but Yi Wanwan was there, so there wasn't room for him to talk. Yi Wanwan's lips turned up into a bewitching smile. What a high and mighty front the martial arts union had. They wanted to take her a notch down as soon as they met. Yi Wanwan naturally didn't hold any fear toward the martial arts union since she wasn't the actual president of the Fearless Alliance. Chapter 1339. Yi Wanwan coldly looked at the man in black. "Who the hell are you? Who said you could talk here?" "You," the man in black's expression changed. "The martial arts union, huh? How ridiculous." Yi Wanwan looked at Elder Jean and said, "Your martial arts union represents the official power of the independent state. Don't merely focus on minding external business. You should remember to also improve the quality of your internal departments. The martial arts union strays seriously lack etiquette." Yi Wanwan might be talking with a poisonous tongue, but she was helpless inside. She also didn't want to insult the martial arts union, all right? Big Dipper could be ignored, but 7 Star was next to her and watching her every move. She was forced to insult them. At that time, the martial arts union could blame the true president of the Fearless Alliance if they wanted. "By phone, who the hell are you? How dare you speak so rudely to the martial arts union? Even Azura from back then wouldn't do that, let alone you. By phone, I'm telling you, put away the front you're showing to the outside. You acting arrogantly and fearlessly is an utter joke to us." A sweet-looking woman harshly shouted out of nowhere. "Who the hell am I?" Yi Wanwan snorted and dryly said, 7 Star, tell her who I am." "The president of the Fearless Alliance," 7 Star replied. Yi Wanwan nodded and slowly walked to the sweet-looking woman. Before anyone could react, she lifted her hand and mercilessly slapped the woman's face. Slap. The crisp sound took everyone by surprise. There were quite a few junior and senior management members from the Fearless Alliance inside the conference room. When they saw their president slapping a member of the martial arts union without demur, they seriously jumped in fright. However, this wasn't a surprise. It would be reasonable even if the president suddenly drew out a saber and hacked that woman to death, let alone a mere slap. This was the president's modus operandi indeed. The sweet-looking woman clutched the left side of her face, frightening malice surfacing in her eyes. "Who the hell are you? You're bringing out Azura and Lord Azura to frighten me? When I led the siege on Azura back then, who knew where you were? Were you playing with mud? Get out of my sight." Yi Wanwan shouted coldly. Yi Wanwan turned to 7 Star before the woman could react. "Throw her out." 7-star briskly complied and wordlessly approached the woman. He grabbed her by the lapels and forcefully flung her out of the conference room. A loud boom was heard as the woman crashed onto the floor outside. President Bai, you're too insolent. Several members of the martial arts union coldly shouted immediately. Insolent? Yi Wanwan snorted. This is the headquarters of the Fearless Alliance. Even the heads of the 4 great clans would have to speak to me nicely if they came here, let alone clowns like you. Remember, I don't care whether you can call the wind and summon the rain in the independent state. In my Fearless Alliance, coil up if you're a dragon and lay down if you're a tiger. Yi Wanwan ignored the members of the martial arts union after saying that and turned to Elder Jean. With a faint smile, she asked, Elder Jean, may I ask why you came here to talk to me today? There's no harm in telling me. Elder Jean slowly looked up with a dry smile on his face. Rumors say that the president of the Fearless Alliance fears nothing, not even the heavens, and even the 4 great clans are unwilling to provoke you. It appears the rumors aren't false. However, Yi Wanwan's brows furrowed slightly when she saw Elder Jin's face clearly. Her head felt like it exploded abruptly as several blurry memories surfaced in her mind. For some reason, she felt like she had seen this person somewhere before. Chapter 1340. 1340. The fragments of memory that flickered in Yi Wanwan's mind were very blurry. In those fragments, aside from Elder Jean, several faces that struck fear inside of her also appeared. Her mind was very instinctively resistant toward these memories, and that explosive pain grew more intense. Sis Feng, 7-star spoke up when he sensed something amiss in Yi Wanwan's expression. Yi Wanwan took a deep breath and swiftly controlled her emotions. The fragments of memory just now were too blurry, so she merely felt an instinctive fear. However, she couldn't recall just what was it that caused such fear. Yi Wanwan was clueless. Yi Wanwan sneered at Elder Jean. Elder Jean, logically speaking, since you came to the Fearless Alliance, I, Bai Feng, should welcome you as the host today. However, there are too many bothersome matters in the Fearless Alliance lately, so speak frankly, Elder Jean. Don't waste both of our valuable time. Okay. Elder Jin's gaze landed on Yi Wanwan, and confusion surfaced in his eyes after a brief assessment. Although he had heard the president of the Fearless Alliance's name, Bai Feng, before, their first meeting was today. For some reason though, he found this woman a bit familiar, as though they had met before. However, Elder Jean didn't think too deeply about it. This woman was the president of the Fearless Alliance, after all. Perhaps he met her somewhere before she left the independent state. President Bai, I'll speak openly then. Elder Jean calmly looked at Yi Wanwan. Are you familiar with the Zhou family, President Bai? Somewhat familiar, Yi Wanwan said. When she first came to the independent state, she would have ended up homeless on the streets if it weren't for the Zhou family, so she did owe the Zhou family to a certain degree. All right. Elder Jean nodded. I heard that President Bai used a firearm in the Zhou residence that day. Big Dipper and the other senior management of the Fearless Alliance were shocked at Elder Jin's words. Firearms were clearly prohibited in the independent state. This rule was established by the 4 great clans instead of the martial arts union, and none of the other rules in the independent state ever conflicted with that rule. The reason the independent state was able to develop until now without any interference and disturbance from other countries was precisely because the people in the independent state found using firearms disdainful and would never use firearms. Once a power started using firearms, it would become the entire independent state's public enemy without a question. The president of the Fearless Alliance didn't dare to use firearms even at the peak of the Fearless Alliance back then. This wasn't because Bro Flattop was afraid, it was because she respected the independent state and didn't wish to become enemies with the entire independent state. The current Yi Wanwan thoroughly understood the independent state's rules and knew without anyone telling her that the rules implied not using firearms. She also knew that even the real Bro Flattop wouldn't dare to use firearms, let alone a counterfeit like her. Hence, how could Yi Wanwan admit a heinous crime like using a firearm so easily? Heh! Yi Wanwan looked at the expressionless Elder Jean and lightly chuckled. Elder Jean, you can eat things carelessly, but you can't say things carelessly. You're saying I used a firearm. What proof do you have though? Chapter 1341. 7 stars slowly turned to look at Yi Wanwan. Quite a few people personally witnessed Yi Wanwan using a firearm at the Zhou residence back then. Although the majority of people didn't dare to speak carelessly about the Fearless Alliance, someone would eventually tell this kind of thing to the Martial Arts Union. President Bai. Elder Jean turned to Yi Wanwan. Hundreds of people clearly saw you using a firearm at the Zhou residence. Walls have ears in the independent state. The Martial Arts Union naturally knows what you did. When you used a firearm at the Zhou residence, a few members of our Martial Arts Union's investigation team witnessed it. Why would our Martial Arts Union frame you for this matter? Elder Jean is referring to us. It was us who personally witnessed President by using a firearm. It's true, we even recorded a video from that day. A certain man calmly spoke up from behind Elder Jean. After saying that, the man pulled up a video on his phone, and everyone could clearly see the contents of the video. Yi Wanwan was holding a gun in front of the Zhou residence. So what if my president pointed a gun at me? I'm happy to have a gun pointed at me. I like having a gun pointed at me. Who told you to mind my own business? The elderly man, who Yi Wanwan pointed a gun at outside the Zhou residence that day, suddenly stepped forward and coldly shouted, "Oh!" A certain member of the Martial Arts Union looked at the elderly man and snorted. Li Gongchen, you're rather masochistic to like having a gun pointed at your head. Li Gongchen disdainfully said, so what if this old man likes to have the president pointing her gun at my head? That's the Fearless Alliance's internal affairs. What business is it of yours? So you're admitting President Bai used a firearm and pointed the gun at you? Elder Jean calmly asked Li Gongchen. Li Gongchen was taken back. He looked at Yi Wanwan and looked at Elder Jean again. Yi Wanwan could only sigh inwardly at this scene. What kind of freaking pig teammate was this? Originally, Yi Wanwan could stubbornly deny it even if the Martial Arts Union had a video, but didn't Li Gongchen's words confirm her crime of using a gun? I never admitted that. Li Gongchen vehemently shook his head under Elder Jin's inquiry. Since you never admitted it, then please explain why you said President Bai pointed a gun at you and you like the feeling of having a gun pointed at you a lot? Elder Jean said. A sullen feeling rose in Li Gongchen's eyes. He clenched his fists and angrily said, Fine, it's my gun. I gave it to the president for safekeeping. Blame me if you want to condemn someone. It has nothing to do with the president. Fine, Li Gongchen, it's fine if you admit it. Take him away. A young man said behind Elder Jean. They never thought they could take away the president of the Fearless Alliance on this trip. Taking a scapegoat and finishing the mission would be enough. A few members of the Martial Arts Union swiftly dashed forward, about to drag Li Gongchen outside. Your Martial Arts Union is truly brazen. You dare to take away brothers of my Fearless Alliance at my headquarters. A bewitching smile turned up on Yi Wanwan's lips. I can allow the Martial Arts Union to take Li Gongchen away, but whether the brothers behind me are willing, I can't guarantee it. Chapter 1342. 1342. The junior and senior management in the conference room all rushed forward like a wave and stood in front of Li Gongchen. The Martial Arts Union wants to take someone away from the Fearless Alliance like this? Aren't you overestimating yourselves? Coldly shouted an elderly man with silver hair wearing an impeccable suit. No one has dared to behave so atrociously in the Fearless Alliance's territory in its history. A young man chuckled eerily, a bloodthirsty craze surfacing in his eyes. If you want to fight, the Fearless Alliance has never been afraid of anyone. Whoever dares to take Li Gongchen away, I'll fuck your mother. Step over my dead body first. Ha! Martial Arts Union, don't be too arrogant. Our Sis Feng has never been afraid of anyone, whether it's Emperor Ji, Piece of Shit, Lord Azura, the four great clans of the independent state, or a stray animal. When has our president ever cowered? Big Dipper loudly guffawed and shoved several members of the Martial Arts Union to the side. This scene caused the people from the Martial Arts Union to frown. Li Gongchen looked at Yi Wanwan, his eyes wet. He wanted to say something but didn't end up saying anything. He was proud he was able to become a member of the Fearless Alliance. It was worth it even if he died today, since he had such a good president. Look. Yi Wanwan's smile remained wide. See, it's not that I'm unwilling to let you take Li Gongchen away. But my brothers have a temper and personality, even I can't manage them as their president. Is that so? Elder Jean glanced indifferently at Yi Wanwan and said dryly, from the looks of it, it's because President Bai doesn't have a strict enough reputation. It's fine though. Since you can't manage your subordinates well, President Bai, our martial arts union, can manage them for you. Yi Wanwan snorted inwardly. As expected, this old guy managed to advance to being an elder of the martial arts union, so he was a real piece of work. Then Elder Jean doesn't plan on sparing Li Gongchen? Yi Wanwan asked softly. Li Gongchen committed a wrong and broke the rules, so he naturally has to be punished. Even the heads of the 4 great clans would have to accept punishment if they broke the rules, not to mention Li Gongchen, Elder Jean replied aloofly. The entire independent state strongly disliked the usage of firearms. Like Elder Jean said, even the heads of the 4 great clans would become the entire independent state's enemy if they used firearms. However, Yi Wanwan just chuckled lightly. Elder Jean, I can't agree with you. It's true that the independent state prohibits the use of firearms, but why must you be so serious about a toy gun? A toy gun? Everyone present was shocked. Yi Wanwan took the phone from the martial arts union member and pointed at the video. Elder Jean, you might be old, but your eyes should still be able to see. No bullets came out when the trigger of the gun was pulled. It was merely a toy gun. Yi Wanwan's words were the incontestable truth. Hundreds of eyes saw her pulling the trigger, but no bullets shot out. It wasn't an overstatement to call a gun without any potential to harm a toy gun. President Bai, what evidence do you have to prove that gun was a toy gun? Elder Jean asked as he looked away from the video. Chapter 1343. Then Elder Jean, what evidence do you have to prove that gun was a real gun? Was someone injured? Or did you find a bullet? If Elder Jean has proof, then the Fearless Alliance will take care of Li Gongchen ourselves faster than your martial arts union. Yi Wanwan's lips turned up. You, the member of the martial arts union who recorded that video, fumed with rage between gritted teeth. By phone, the president of the Fearless Alliance was too good at words. And they couldn't refute this excuse at all. Since no one was hurt by the gun and you didn't find a bullet. Elder Jean, you didn't even clearly investigate the truth yet rashly came to my Fearless Alliance to denounce us for a non-existent crime and wanted to arrest people. Shouldn't Elder Jean and the martial arts union give me an explanation? Yi Wanwan snorted. Elder Jean frowned slightly. Rumors of Bro Flat Top merely said she was arrogant, imperious, and fearless, but he didn't expect her to be so quick-witted and eloquent. This didn't match the rumors. Elder Jean chose to stop haggling about this matter and said aloofly, let's forget about that for now. Let's talk business. Yi Wanwan was pensive when she heard Elder Jin's words. This old geezer would probably use the previous accusation as the bedrock for this supposed official business. As for what it was, she had a feeling it wasn't anything good. Heh, Elder Jean, let's get to the bottom of this matter first. Yi Wanwan snorted. Your martial arts union came spewing accusations at the Fearless Alliance before clearly investigating everything. If you don't give me an explanation today, how would that affect the Fearless Alliance's standing in the independent state? The people from the Fearless Alliance all looked at each other. The president of the Fearless Alliance was truly daring. She got the upper hand already but still flaunted it. Not only did she successfully clear her crime of using a gun, but she still wanted the martial arts union to give her an explanation. Oh, then may I ask what you want, President Bai? Elder Jean asked Yi Wanwan with a light chuckle. Elder Jean, you've gotten muddle-headed with age. If someone has committed a wrong, they should apologize, Yi Wanwan said. The members of the martial arts union's faces all shifted. She wanted them to apologize. Good, President Bai is frank and straightforward as expected. It was the martial arts union's fault for not thoroughly investigating the matter first. Elder Jean told a young man behind him. Apologize already. This young man was the one who recorded Yi Wanwan using a gun with his phone. The young man gnashed his teeth before turning to look at Yi Wanwan eventually. I'm very sorry, President Bai. You should apologize to Li Gongchen, Yi Wanwan said aloofly. Fine. The young man turned to Li Gongchen. I'm sorry. Li Gongchen snorted. Punk, brighten your vision next time. You can't even differentiate between a toy gun and a real gun. What trash. Blah. Li Gongchen spat at the young man. The young man tightly clenched his fists but didn't say a word. Elder Jean had to have a reason for making him apologize. All right, President, we should talk official business now, Elder Jean said. Speak, Yi Wanwan replied nonchalantly. Does President Bai still remember Azura? Elder Jean chuckled lightly. Yi Wanwan's brows furrowed lightly. Why did this old geezer mention Azura? How the heck would she remember? Of course I remember. What do you mean, Elder Jean? Why don't you speak frankly? Yi Wanwan calmly said. Chapter 1344 Elder Jean dryly examined Yi Wanwan before chuckling lightly and said, Of course President Bai remembers. It was President Bai who led the Fearless Alliance and joined the plan to eradicate Azura back then. You worked the hardest too. Yi Wanwan was silent. This old geezer was telling the truth. President Bai should know that Azura has recently resurged from the dead. Rumors say that Lord Azura has returned. I think President could take advantage of Azura's weak period and strike a fatal blow, Elder Jean said to Yi Wanwan. Elder Jean, I'm afraid you didn't honor us with your visit today because of the gun matter, right? The main objective was Azura, am I right? Yi Wanwan snorted. Elder Jean didn't refute this. President Bai, you should know that it was you who was the first to lead the eradication of Azura. Now that Lord Azura has returned and Azura has resurged from the dead, they probably aren't that friendly toward President Bai and the Fearless Alliance. President Bai should plan while you still can, Elder Jean advised. Yi Wanwan called Elder Jean an old fox inside her mind. The Martial Arts Union was the official faction of the independent state, and Azura didn't do anything that violated the independent state's principles, so even the Martial Arts Union didn't have the right to repress Azura. However, Azura's power was too enormous and Lord Azura was arrogant, unyielding, and unruly. He ignored the Martial Arts Union completely, offending the Martial Arts Union's ego. The Martial Arts Union wouldn't destroy Azura themselves. Instead, they would instigate other factions to do it for them. Yi Wanwan had a basic understanding of the animosity between Azura and the Fearless Alliance. During Azura's most prosperous period, many factions of the independent state had to offer a tribute every month, and the Fearless Alliance was no exception. However, Bro Flat Top became furious and killed the Azura members who came asking for a tribute. And so, the feud between the two was formed. Hence, back when the Martial Arts Union launched a plan to eradicate Azura, the Fearless Alliance agreed to it without any hesitation. Yi Wanwan didn't know what happened afterward though. Why should I agree to this? What benefit will the Fearless Alliance and I get from this? Yi Wanwan said with a faint smile. The Martial Arts Union can send people to assist the Fearless Alliance and President Bai, Elder Jean replied. Just that. Yi Wanwan snorted. It's you, the Martial Arts Union, who wants to destroy Azura, so it's warranted for you to provide money, power, and people. That doesn't count. President, you probably offended piece of shit, right? Elder Jean switched the topic suddenly and said meaningfully. I'm sure President Bai knows what kind of person piece of shit is. Even the ancient clans fear piece of shit to an extent. The Fearless Alliance is nobody in piece of shit's eyes. If President Bai agrees, our Martial Arts Union can mediate between you two and make sure piece of shit doesn't cause trouble for President Bai and the Fearless Alliance. Big Dipper snorted before Yi Wanwan could say anything. Bluff all you want. If you're really that capable, you should get piece of shit to attack Azura instead. Even Azura in its peak period might not dare to provoke piece of shit. Why did you come looking for us? Piece of shit could eliminate an entire army by himself. It was a truth publicly recognized in the independent state that piece of shit was unmatched. Chapter 1345. Of course, the independent state alone wasn't enough to describe Piece of Shit's prowess though. In Piece of Shit's own words, there wasn't anyone in this world who was his match. The martial arts union might be the official faction of the independent state, but they would also suffer if they backed Piece of Shit into a dead end. President Bai doesn't need to worry about that. Our martial arts union naturally has our methods, Elder Jean said with a chuckle. Elder Jean, you probably misunderstood something. Our fearless alliance has never been afraid of anyone, including Piece of Shit. As for how Piece of Shit's name reverberated throughout the independent state, I think Elder Jean should know this well, Yi Wanwan said disdainfully. If the president of the Fearless Alliance was really afraid of Piece of Shit, why would she publicize Piece of Shit's nickname far and wide? Even now, no one in the independent state knew Piece of Shit's real name and only called him Piece of Shit. President Bai, you accepted a few outsiders. Do you really think the martial arts union doesn't know? Elder Jean chuckled coldly. The rules of the independent state weren't established just by our martial arts union, it also includes the 4 great clans and some secret factions. If President Bai really wants to break this rule, it's no big deal if something happens to yourself, but I'm afraid you'll drag your brothers down with you. Elder Jean chuckled. Of course, if President Bai agrees, our martial arts union will act as the authority on this matter and give those people a permit for the independent state, allowing them to become residents of the independent state. We can end the matter like that. How about it? Yi Wanwan was brimming with jealousy from Elder Jin's words. I also want a permit for the independent state. If she had the permit, why would she need to pretend to be the president of the Fearless Alliance? Her heart wouldn't be raised to her throat all day, and she wouldn't roll at night sleeplessly anymore. Elder Jean, I can agree to your request, but agreeing doesn't mean I was successfully threatened by you. It's because we do have animosities with Azura. How about this? Aside from the aforementioned terms, your martial arts union will provide 3 times the manpower and money and will assist us to your best ability when needed. Otherwise, case dismissed, Yi Wanwan negotiated. What? 3 times the manpower and money? Some of the martial arts union members standing behind Elder Jean looked at each other, bewildered. The outside world said that the president of the Fearless Alliance was avaricious in nature and would rob money when she lacked it. Even the extremely wealthy Shen family, one of the 4 great clans, was once robbed by her. It appeared there was some truth to those rumors. 3 times? President Bai is truly demanding an exorbitant price. Elder Jean looked at Yi Wanwan meaningfully. He invited many factions into this plan to destroy Azura, but the Fearless Alliance was the hardest to coax and the darkest and craftiest faction. There had never been a faction who dared to negotiate with the martial arts union like this. Fine, I'll agree to your terms, President. Triple the amount of manpower and money. Elder Jean finally nodded and complied. The manpower isn't urgent, but send the money to me first. Remember, everything is null if you're missing a single thing, Yi Wanwan said. Elder Jean chuckled lightly. Don't worry, President Bai. Since we agreed to your terms, we definitely won't renege on them. I'll excuse myself now that we're done discussing official business. Then Elder Jean led the members of the martial arts union out of the conference room. Big Dipper turned to Yi Wanwan in surprise. Sisfeng, I feel like you're more arrogant since your return. Back then, you would merely demand double the amount when you asked for money from the martial arts union. This time, you actually demanded triple. Yi Wanwan glanced at Big Dipper. Who knew how much prices have risen since then? I merely increased it a fraction. Chapter 1346. Big Dipper was rendered speechless by Yi Wanwan's explanation. She sounded very logical. Sis Feng, are we really gonna cause trouble for Azura? But if the martial arts union provides us with the money and manpower, we can consider it since Lord Azura just returned and Azura hasn't returned to its peak yet, Big Dipper quietly said to Yi Wanwan. The members of the Fearless Alliance present all nodded in approval of Big Dipper's words. Cause what trouble? We'll take the money first and discuss it later. Yi Wanwan glanced at them. But, Sis Feng, you aren't planning on embezzling the martial arts union's money and doing nothing, right? Our fearless alliance might have a bad reputation, but we're renowned for our credibility. Look, our 7-kill order declares that any faction who receives it will be destroyed within 7 days, and not even a god could save them. This 7-kill order relies on trust. If we took the money but didn't act as promised and reneged on our word, it would be bad for our reputation, right? Big Dipper turned to Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan was startled. What the heck did he mean by being trustworthy? How the heck does destroying someone's clan have anything to do with credibility? Who said our fearless alliance isn't trustworthy? Yi Wanwan glanced at Big Dipper. Which of your ears heard I was planning to do nothing? Big Dipper looked bewildered. Then Sis Fong means, I merely promised the martial arts union I'd attack. Did I say when I'll attack? Yi Wanwan asked coldly. I don't think so. Big Dipper automatically shook his head. Since I didn't say when I'll attack, why are we in such a hurry? If I'm in a bad mood, I don't have to attack for 10 or 20 years. Yi Wanwan snorted. Then Sis Fong, are you in a bad mood right now? Big Dipper inquired. I am. Yi Wanwan glanced at Big Dipper. Big Dipper relaxed when he heard that. That's good. I say we should wait 20 years before attacking Azura. Yi Wanwan didn't respond to that. Anyway, she wasn't the president of the Fearless Alliance. She'd first extort the money from the martial arts union, then the martial arts union wouldn't be able to find her when they looked for her later. The one who extorted their money was the president of the Fearless Alliance, not her. Meeting adjourned. Yi Wanwan waved her hand and turned to leave. A moment later, Yi Wanwan returned to the office. The man who Yi Wanwan arranged to watch over Virus and Great White hadn't left yet. He stood as quiet as a cicada in winter by the side, his eyes not daring to move a millimeter away from Virus and Great White. President, you're finally back. Ah, President. The man looked like he was reuniting with his long-lost parents when he saw Yi Wanwan entering the office, excitement brimming on his face. Virus and Great White didn't start fighting, right? Yi Wanwan asked. The man shook his head frantically. No. They didn't start fighting. I'd definitely accomplish any task the president assigned to me. Although Virus and that white tiger are ferocious and nearly started fighting a few times, they were intimidated by me. They wouldn't dare to fight with me present. However, just as the man finished speaking, Virus and Great White turned to look at the man in a rare moment of synchronicity, as though they understood the man's words. Are all the members of the Fearless Alliance so good at bragging? Who did they learn it from? President, if there's nothing else, I'll be taking my leave now. The man looked embarrassed. Yi Wanwan waved her hand, allowing the man to leave. Chapter 1347. After the office door closed, Yi Wanwan sprinted to Great White and grabbed him, lavishing him with affection. Great White looked a bit exasperated and merely lay in his spot silently. However, at that point, Virus pushed Yi Wanwan's back with a paw, his large, black eyes intently staring at her. Little Black is good, Yi Wanwan happily said as she started scratching Little Black's chin. Virus' eyes were narrowed as his head raised, pure enjoyment on his face. After petting Virus and Great White, Yi Wanwan finally let them go. Immediately, Virus stood up while Great White remained silently laying in his spot, unmoving, but Great White's eyes were locked onto Virus. Virus stretched before imposingly striding over to Great White and laying down in front of Great White. However, Virus was facing Great White with his butt. This scene rendered Yi Wanwan speechless. Virus was probably announcing his authority to Great White and telling this tiger this place was his territory, so he was the boss. Great White didn't have any desire to pay attention to Virus though. He merely turned his head to the side. Anyway, it was good that Virus and Great White didn't start fighting. This territory belonged to Virus to begin with, so he should be allowed to play boss as he pleased. Yi Wanwan sat down on her office chair and sunk into contemplation. She still had too many things to do, but she couldn't mobilize the Fearless Alliance's core power right now. It was unrealistic for her to use the Fearless Alliance's core power to search for Si Yihan. Moreover, it would elicit the suspicion of 7-Star and Emperor G, as well as those old geezers in the Fearless Alliance. If only she could build a power that solely belonged to her. Of course, it was a good plan, but implementing it wouldn't be easy. Yi Wanwan knew that by pretending to be Bai Feng in the Fearless Alliance, she could die horribly with no hope of salvation if she was the slightest bit careless. Additionally, her position was too passive. Today, the martial arts union came looking for trouble. Tomorrow, piece of shit would come looking for trouble. In a few days, the 4 great clans would probably also come looking for trouble. What would she do if this continued? However, based on the current situation, she was extorting a large sum of money from the martial arts union, and the Fearless Alliance was rich to begin with. In her position as the president of the Fearless Alliance, it shouldn't be difficult for her to mobilize some funds. If she used someone else's money to create her own power. Sis Feng. Before Yi Wanwan could think anymore, Big Dipper's voice was heard from outside the door. Yi Wanwan packed away her thoughts and restored her aloof facade. Enter. Big Dipper opened the door and entered, walking toward Yi Wanwan. Sis Feng, are you free tonight? Let's go party. It's been a while since we've partied. Yi Wanwan glanced at Big Dipper. Party your ass. Party where? Yi Wanwan inquired. A new place opened up lately. I heard there's a lot of new items there. Big Dipper laughed mischievously. This isn't another strange and exotic restaurant, right? Where they'll make me eat fried ants. I'll leave it to you and 7 Star to arrange it, Yi Wanwan said. I promise. Big Dipper turned to leave. Hold on. Yi Wanwan stopped Big Dipper. Let's build a small park here. Big Dipper froze in his spot. Build a park? What do you mean? A residence for Great White and Virus, Yi Wanwan replied matter-of-factly. Big Dipper was astonished. Sis Feng, isn't it too extravagant to build a park for 2 wild beasts? This is utterly... Oh, right, I think the 7th floor is quite nice. There's a lot of light and space. It's perfect to be turned into an indoor park. Yi Wanwan. Chapter 1348. Yi Wanwan was thinking of an outdoor park. Big Dipper had an even better idea. He wanted to renovate the 7th floor. However, Sis Feng, the 7th floor is the Elder's territory. You should think it over carefully. Of course, if you insist on renovating it, Big Dipper chuckled mischievously. Yi Wanwan's lips twitched. What did I say? Who was it that wanted to renovate the 7th floor this whole time? It's fine, Yi Wanwan said calmly. The entire Fearless Alliance is mine. Are you saying I need to ask for the Elder's permission to change something in my own territory? I'll leave this task to you. Help me renovate the 7th floor. Directly go to the finance department to approve the expense. Big Dipper's face changed when he heard that. Leaving this task to him? Wasn't this the same as telling him to offend those old geezers? However, Yi Wanwan said her piece, so Big Dipper naturally couldn't refute it. Big Dipper wished nothing more than to ruthlessly slap himself. Why did I run my mouth off? Alright, I'll go do that now if there's nothing else, Big Dipper sighed and said dispiritedly. Go on, go on. Yi Wanwan waved her hand, telling Big Dipper to get out of her sight. Yi Wanwan went to engage in another round of petting Virus and Great White after Big Dipper left. However, a moment later, Yi Wanwan's phone started ringing suddenly. Yi Wanwan was startled when she saw the caller ID. Big Dipper gave this phone and number to her when she first joined the Fearless Alliance. Only a few people aside from Big Dipper and 7 Star knew this number. Yi Wanwan answered the phone and coldly said, Speak. Is this door master? An indifferent and laid-back voice was heard from the other end. Which dumb fool was calling and asking if she was the president? Rubbish. Yi Wanwan coldly asked. Which department are you? A moment of silence occurred. What do you mean? What do I mean? Yi Wanwan's lips twitched. Who are you? Yi Shuehan, the indifferent voice answered. What piece of shit? Yi Wanwan was in shock and disbelief when she learned the other person's identity. Thinking back on it, piece of shit called her door master, not president. Lord shit? I mean, Knight Aaron if you. Why are you suddenly free today, Knight Aaron? Yi Wanwan's icy smile instantly disappeared without a trace. Yi Wanwan suddenly recalled that she exchanged phone numbers with piece of shit at the casino that night. However, she never expected piece of shit to call her out of his own initiative. She'd nearly forgotten about this matter. Business, piece of shit said aloofly. Knight-errant what business? Yi Wanwan's brows furrowed slightly at piece of shit's words. Could it be that piece of shit discovered her identity? I'll give you an address. We'll talk when you arrive. Piece of shit hung up the phone immediately after saying that. Yi Wanwan was dumbfounded as she listened to the busy tone on the other end of the phone. He didn't give me the address yet? Yi Wanwan quickly sent piece of shit a text message, telling him to give her his address. Yi Wanwan sunk into silence when she saw the address in the message. Should she go by herself to see this top-level boss of the independent state or bring a large team? After pondering over it for a long time, Yi Wanwan decided to go by herself. Chapter 1349. 1349. Back then, Bro Flat Top laid down a trap and planned to trick piece of shit but ended up tricking herself instead. The advantage in numbers seemed to be useless against piece of shit. Yi Wanwan had no choice but to drive alone toward the address sent by piece of shit. What was most troublesome was that the independent state didn't have any map navigations, so who knew how many wrong turns she had taken? Yi Wanwan finally managed to reach the destination close to evening. After getting out of the car, Yi Wanwan assessed her surroundings, confusion surfacing on her face. This place looks a little familiar, like... Yi Wanwan's face suddenly shifted. Isn't this place near my haunted mansion? Miss Yi. Piece of shit's voice was heard behind her. Yi Wanwan reflexively turned around. His long, ink-colored hair fell to his waist, and his athletic tracksuit gave him a very casual appearance, but when it was paired with his face, it could seriously make people want to shriek. Too freaking beautiful. How could a grown man look so beautiful? If piece of shit wore women's clothes, he would simply be perfect aside from the fact that his chest was flat. Lord shit. Yi Wanwan hastily received him with a smile when she saw piece of shit walking toward her. Piece of shit's brows furrowed slightly at Yi Wanwan's form of address. Lord shit, may I ask, why did you call me here? Yi Wanwan asked with a grin. Piece of shit looked at Yi Wanwan and dryly said, No need to be so polite, Miss Wanwan. You can just call me Yi Shuehan. She actually forgot about this part. Piece of shit didn't like this nickname, but what did this have to do with politeness? Let's go to my house, piece of shit quietly said. Go to your house, Yi Wanwan was startled. Piece of shit and I are freaking neighbors. Actual freaking neighbors. A moment later, Yi Wanwan followed piece of shit to a place near the haunted mansion. When they passed by Yi Wanwan's haunted mansion, piece of shit suddenly stopped and pointed at the mansion. This is a haunted house. A dismemberment case happened there before. There's probably a ghost inside. Can you freaking talk humanese? What freaking ghost? I live there, okay? Yeah. It's pretty scary, but aren't ghosts too unscientific? There probably aren't any, Yi Wanwan said with an awkward chuckle. Piece of shit looked at Yi Wanwan. Too many unscientific things happened. I saw a ghost there with my own eyes. You're at least the highest and most frightening boss in the independent state. Is it really okay for you to patter on nonsensically while looking so earnest? Although Yi Wanwan was scared of ghosts, she knew ghosts didn't exist in this world. But when piece of shit claimed there was a ghost inside with such a serious expression, how the heck was she supposed to continue living there? Lord shit, let's talk business instead. Yi Wanwan helplessly smiled. She really didn't want to continue with this topic of a haunted house. Soon, the two of them arrived at a house near the haunted mansion under piece of shit's lead. It was rather coincidental. This house was located behind the haunted mansion. If Yi Wanwan stood on the top floor of the mansion, she could clearly see this place from the window. As Yi Wanwan examined this place, she noticed something unusual about the house. There wasn't a door. Chapter 1350. Yi Wanwan suddenly understood why piece of shit reached out to her as she looked at this doorless mansion. Someone tried to assassinate me earlier and accidentally broke the door when they attacked. Piece of shit explained to Yi Wanwan. Assassinate you? Yi Wanwan wanted to laugh. It turned out this top-level boss could also be the target of an assassination. However, I feel like my assassins most likely went to the wrong place. Piece of shit glanced at the nearby haunted mansion. They probably wanted to assassinate the owner of the haunted mansion but went to the wrong place. Although Yi Wanwan wanted to choke piece of shit to death, his words caused her to sink into contemplation. If piece of shit's words were true, didn't that mean someone wanted to assassinate her? She seemed to have only offended third elderly C in the independent state. Yi Wanwan didn't take it too seriously though. After all, no assassins could commit such a low-level mistake and not even figure out their victim's correct address. So, Lord Shit wants me to help you change the door? Yi Wanwan asked piece of shit slowly. Aren't you the door master? I'm unfamiliar with this area, so help me get a large and secure door, piece of shit requested her. Yi Wanwan was at a loss for words. The hell was she a door master? What would she know about secure doors? Alright, I'll try my best. Yi Wanwan was forced to nod in agreement. It was a hole that she dug herself after all. I want it as soon as possible. I can pick it up from your store too, piece of shit said. I mean it's fine. We have a delivery service. After I choose one for you tomorrow, I'll have a worker deliver it and help you install it. Yi Wanwan's lips twitched. What freaking store did she have? All right. Piece of shit nodded. Miss Yi, come inside and have a seat. Lord Shit, it's fine. Yi Wanwan shook her head. She didn't have any time. She still had to freaking buy a door for piece of shit. Let's eat a casual meal together. Piece of shit turned and entered the doorless house. Yi Wanwan lightly sighed and had no choice but to follow piece of shit inside. Piece of shit's residence was very simple. Besides a few chairs and desks, there wasn't anything else inside the large room. I'll go make the food. Feel free to have a look around, piece of shit told Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan was startled when she heard that. This legendary boss actually knew how to cook? What a homely man. Do you eat meat, Miss Wanwan? Piece of shit asked. I do. Yi Wanwan nodded vehemently. Oh, but I don't have any. I've been eating vegetarian recently. Piece of shit turned to enter the kitchen. Then why did you freaking ask whether I ate meat? After piece of shit entered the kitchen, Yi Wanwan looked around the house. Piece of shit's residence was rather nice and spacious but was rather lifeless. Although the house was clean and organized, some simple decorations would make it look a lot better. A photo hung on the nearby wall. The person in the photo bore some similarities to Yi Wanwan in appearance and looked exquisite. A moment later, Yi Wanwan sat down on the sofa and couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Piece of shit and she were actually neighbors. Being neighbors with such a legendary boss was rather stressful. Chapter 1351. About half an hour later, piece of shit served the food on the dining table. Yi Wanwan glanced at it. They were vegetarian dishes, but they looked quite appetizing. She didn't expect a boss like him to have good cooking skills. Miss Yi, please help yourself, piece of shit said to Yi Wanwan as he sat down at the table. Yi Wanwan didn't hold back and started eating. What freaking good cooking skills. Yi Wanwan swore she'd rather eat fried ants. Aside from looking good, these dishes weren't good at all. It was absolutely unbearable to swallow. Lord Shit, is that your wife? Yi Wanwan glanced at the series of photos nearby. Piece of shit glanced at the photos as well and aloofly said, That's my mother. Mother passed away a long time ago. Your personality is a bit similar to my mother's, piece of shit said after surveying Yi Wanwan a few times. Yi Wanwan was startled. Similar in personality? Is he referring to how I protected him back at the casino? Lord Shit, you must know a lot of things with your identity, right? Yi Wanwan asked meaningfully. About what? Piece of shit asked as he ate the incredibly awful food. Lord Shit must be quite familiar with the Fearless Alliance, right? I heard Lord Shit's nickname was given by the president of the Fearless Alliance. Yi Wanwan probed furtively. Piece of shit was taken aback when he heard that. I think she's called by phone? Piece of shit shook his head. I'm not familiar with her. Shit, what a great nonchalant. I'm not familiar with her. The president of the Fearless Alliance schemed in every way she could to challenge Piece of Shit and ended up on the ground after a fierce beating from Piece of Shit. Now, it turned out Piece of Shit was utterly unfamiliar with Bro Flattop and hadn't retained any memories of her, nor did he attach any importance to her. Does Lord Shit know about the faction, Azura? Yi Wanwan continued to ask. I've heard of them. Piece of Shit nodded and looked at Yi Wanwan. Why is a door seller like you so interested in these factions of the independent state? Yi Wanwan explained with a smile. Lord Shit, it's not like that. I conduct a business, isn't it normal for me to learn about these factions of the independent state? Piece of Shit nodded. It sounded rather logical. A faction like Azura is considered top-notch in the independent state. They're decent, Piece of Shit said. Look at this freaking difference between his reactions. When I asked him about the president of the Fearless Alliance, he was utterly unfamiliar. When I asked about Azura, he immediately replied in recognition. Lord Azura should know about Lord Azura too, right? Yi Wanwan hastily added. The president of the Fearless Alliance and Lord Azura were great enemies, so Yi Wanwan wanted to obtain all the knowledge she could about Lord Azura. I've heard of him. Piece of Shit nodded. Is Lord Azura very strong? How does he compare to the Fearless Alliance? Yi Wanwan asked. They probably aren't on the same level? Is Lord Azura very strong? Yi Wanwan asked again. He's decent. I've heard some things about Lord Azura, Piece of Shit answered. Yi Wanwan couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Since someone at Piece of Shit's level called Lord Azura decent, it was proof of Lord Azura's frightening abilities. Isn't the Martial Arts Union sending me to my death by telling me to handle Azura? Whether it's the Fearless Alliance or the Azura, it's best if you don't ask too much about them. Just focus on conducting your business. You don't need to overly involve yourself with these factions, Piece of Shit said to Yi Wanwan. Chapter 1352. Yi Wanwan merely nodded at Piece of Shit's genial reminder. Yi Wanwan also didn't want to involve herself too much with them. Her original intention upon coming to the independent state was merely to find Si Yihan and ask him about the truth, then take him back to China. Who would have expected everything to escape her control after coming to the independent state? She sank deeper and deeper, unable to extract herself. Lord Shit, why haven't you ever created any factions? Yi Wanwan asked curiously. Rumors claimed this man in front of her had absolute power. This was especially true in a place like the independent state where a person wasn't allowed to use firearms and wasn't overly restrained by laws. Martial skills were everything, so why didn't someone like Piece of Shit create his own power and build his own empire? Piece of Shit was briefly startled. After a moment of thought, he said, why should I create a faction and recruit a bunch of useless garbage? What's the point of that? Yi Wanwan was rendered speechless. Everyone was probably garbage in Piece of Shit's eyes aside from himself. He was seriously egoistical to his bones. Do you want to drink? Piece of Shit asked Yi Wanwan a moment later. Yi Wanwan reflexively wanted to decline but thought better of it and realized that no one would control her here, so she nodded after a momentary daze. Sure. Piece of Shit got up to retrieve the wine and poured a cup for Yi Wanwan. I brewed this wine myself. You can't drink it outside. Oh. Yi Wanwan was immediately interested. Yi Wanwan soon drank the entire cup. How's the taste? Piece of Shit asked Yi Wanwan. The taste is nice, but there doesn't seem to be any alcohol taste. Yi Wanwan put down the cup with confusion on her face. She'd never drank wine that didn't have a taste of alcohol. Yes. Piece of Shit nodded. It doesn't have any alcohol content, but there's a sweetness to it. Yi Wanwan looked at Piece of Shit, bewildered. Lord Shit, could I treat this as a beverage? You could if you want, Piece of Shit said. Then why did you freaking ask me if I wanted to drink? Call it a beverage then. You're making a deer out to be a horse. Oh right, Lord Shit, I live right next to you. You can come over whenever you have time, Yi Wanwan said to Piece of Shit. Next door? Piece of Shit looked up. I only have a haunted house next door. Yi Wanwan was exasperated. That's an unlucky house at most. Isn't calling it a haunted house too much? You live inside that haunted house? Piece of shit was astonished. Yes, I live inside the haunted house, Yi Wanwan said as she nodded. Piece of shit was utterly unfamiliar with the president of the Fearless Alliance, so he was clueless about the president's previous residence. That was why it was fine for Yi Wanwan to tell him she lived next door. Oh, be careful, it's haunted, Piece of shit nonchalantly said before getting up to clean the table. Yi Wanwan's lips twitched. Is Piece of shit doing this on purpose? Oh right, Lord Shit. Yi Wanwan suddenly stood up in front of Piece of shit. I recently got news that there's someone preparing to eliminate Azura and is providing generous compensation. Is Lord Shit interested? Chapter 1353. If Piece of shit was willing to fight Azura, couldn't she just sit back and relax? At that point, the martial arts union would give triple the price. She would give Piece of shit 1/3 and keep the remaining 2/3. I'm not interested, Piece of shit replied calmly. There's a lot of money. A lot of money. Yi Wanwan added enthusiastically. How much money? Piece of shit looked at Yi Wanwan. About this amount, Yi Wanwan whispered. I'm uninterested in outside factions and won't interfere with them. Otherwise, do you think the Fearless Alliance would have survived until today? Piece of shit asked Yi Wanwan. Could it be that Piece of shit wasn't being merciful toward the president of the Fearless Alliance? He simply wasn't interested in attacking. Monsieur, you probably aren't just a door seller, right? Piece of shit's unfathomable eyes suddenly turned toward Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan felt a little guilty. Did he see through me just like that? Besides selling doors, you're probably also a mission intermediary. Large factions assign missions, you're responsible for finding people to accept missions, and you take a percentage as commission. Am I right? Piece of shit continued. Intermediary. Do I look like an intermediary? That's right. Lord Shit is seriously awesome. You managed to figure that out. I have to feed myself somehow, huh? Yi Wanwan quickly went along with it. Help me change the door tomorrow. I won't accept the mission, Piece of shit said. Fine. You're the boss, everything you say is right. When Yi Wanwan left Piece of shit's house, it was dusk. Big Dipper had started the renovation plans for the 7th floor already, and the elders on the 7th floor didn't say much. They merely moved to another floor. Inside her office, Great White and Virus were sound asleep, and one of Virus's paws was boldly placed on Great White's tummy. Sis Fong, I made the reservation. At that time, Big Dipper entered the office and spoke with a chuckle. Wait, Yi Wanwan looked at Big Dipper. Do you know how to fix doors? Fix doors. Big Dipper was taken back before chortling. There's nothing I don't know. Sis Fong, it was me who installed your office door. Great. Yi Wanwan nodded with joy. As people said, armies were to be maintained for years but used on a single day. Big Dipper was finally of use. Yi Wanwan tossed Piece of shit's address to Big Dipper. Put on a worker's uniform for me tomorrow, then go to the address I gave you and install a security door. You want me to be a door installation worker? Big Dipper seemed to find it hard to accept. Why would he know how to install a door? He was just casually bragging. Don't prattle on about it and just go. Yi Wanwan glanced at Big Dipper. Fine. Big Dipper was forced to nod in agreement. Even bragging is so risky nowadays. Sis Fong, 7-star and the others are waiting. Let's go. Big Dipper hurried Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan didn't want to go to this place at all, but since Bro Flat Top liked to go out often, it was difficult for her to decline. Yi Wanwan had no choice but to get up and follow Big Dipper outside. 7-star and Autumn Water were also coming with them. About half an hour later, Big Dipper drove to a bustling street. They didn't get far and could already hear the deafening and provocative music. Only then did Yi Wanwan realize that Big Dipper was referring to a large and luxurious nightclub. Shit. I've never been to this kind of place. How should I fake my experience realistically? Chapter 1354. 1354. As the deafening music played, Yi Wanwan puffed up her courage and opened the door, slowly exiting the car. 7-Star and Autumn Water were inside and had requested a private room already. Please enter. A girl that looked like a server instantly came up to greet them with a smile. As they walked to the private room, Yuanwan saw a myriad of good-looking girls. Some wore rabbit girl costumes while some were cosplaying and looked very cute. However, what surprised Yuanwan was that there were actually men with heavy makeup who were wearing seriously eye-scathing clothes. However, their looks were passable. What kind of freaking place is this? A moment later, the server opened the door to the private room and retreated. Xiaofeng, come over. Autumn Water quickly stood up from the sofa upon seeing Yi Wanwan and waved her hand. 7-Star sat on the side with an aloof expression. Sis Feng. Yi Wanwan nodded in response. A server entered the private room and asked with a smile, "Do you need any drinks?" Yi Wanwan was about to ask for some drinks when Big Dipper waved his hand and said, "We don't. Our Sis Feng never drinks. Alright, give us some goods." The server nodded and left. Yi Wanwan was speechless. Si Yihin didn't allow her to drink alcohol when she was in China. Now that she was in the independent state, it turned out Bro Flat Top never drank alcohol either. After some time, a bunch of men and women flooded the room. The server stood on the side, allowing Big Dipper and his group to choose. Come here. Big Dipper chuckled and picked a few girls in sexy clothes. Little Big Brother, come sit here. Autumn Water picked a decent-looking guy. 7-Star, pick someone, Big Dipper urged when he saw 7-Star's inactivity. No need, 7-Star calmly said. Pa, outcast. Big Dipper pursed his lips and looked at Yuanwan. Sis Feng, ignore him. Your turn. Yuanwan's lips twitched. Bro Flat Top also liked this kind of thing? She swept over the selection. Although they weren't bad-looking, they seemed rather flavorless since she was accustomed to stunning beauties. I don't see anyone suitable, Yuanwan said. What in the world are you doing? Even I find them ugly. Can't you give us a better selection? Change. Big Dipper said with a frown. The server had no choice but to take all the guys away and show them another group a moment later. Sis Feng, this batch is good. They're better looking than the earlier ones. They can't compare to me, but they're passable, Big Dipper told Yuanwan. Everyone in this group was wearing casual suits. There were mature men overflowing with masculine charm, and there was also fresh meat with pure and sweet looks. However, they were still incredibly lacking compared to the stunning beauties she'd seen before. She really wasn't interested. There's nothing, Yi Wanwan said, bored. It wasn't that she didn't want to choose. There really wasn't anything good. 7-Star couldn't possibly suspect her for this, right? Yi Wanwan believed that Bro Flat Top wasn't an unselective person. She'd at least want top-notch superior quality, right? Little Big Brother, come sit here. Yi Wanwan didn't find anything, but Autumn Water's eyes brightened. She instantly chose a shy-looking fresh meat. I didn't expect you to be like this, Autumn Water. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.